Good morning, good evening, hello everybody. My name is Payal Tandon. I'm one of the co-founders of e-GMAT. I will be your host today in this webinar in which we're going to talk about algebra. How is it that you can master algebra to get to your target score in the GMAT? So we're going to be talking about that. With me, I have Shweta. Shweta is our lead subject matter expert in quant at e-GMAT. She will be taking care of your queries that you post in the Q&A pod, and I will make you aware of the Q&A pod once we get to that layout. Now, to make sure that everyone is at the right level for this session, we shared these concept files with you as a way to prepare all of you. So let me just get a poll to understand how many of you went through this content. How many of you have already gone through this content? Please press yes if you have, and press no if you haven't. All right, so I see about 1/3 of the class has gone through this content. That's good. Now, again, you have access to this in the free trial for those of you who are not as yet e-GMAT students. So you have access to all these files in the free trial. So definitely access those after the session. In fact, we would be pointing to a couple of concepts that are there in these concept files as we go through this session. So, all right, sounds good. Every weekend, Saturdays and Sundays, we conduct webinars so that you have the right kind of material at your disposal. You have the right kind of strategies at your disposal so that you can score your target score in the GMAT. So next Saturday, Rajat, one of our other co-founders, will be conducting a webinar in which he's going to tell you how is it that you can create your own personalized study plan. So, so definitely register for that session if you haven't as yet. If you haven't done so as yet, click on the register now button to register for that webinar. Now, if you have been preparing for your test for quite some time, and this brings me to my next poll over here, because the quant workshop relates very well to this next poll. When do you plan to take the test? So for those of you who plan to take the test in the next 15 days, definitely register for this quant workshop because you will get feedback as to how well prepared you are for your quant, right? So definitely register for that. For those of you who have your test beyond 16 days, definitely register for this workshop because you will get to know where you're at and you will be able to tweak your study plan or just get those insights into your weak areas so that you can put in more throttle in those areas to get to your target GMAT score. So definitely register for that right now. Think about this as a proctored mock test. Okay. All right. So let's now go into this poll, and again, there 1/3 of the class hasn't as yet taken the GMAT test date. I'm saying that based on the fact that you again you may have taken the GMAT test date, but your test is more than 2 months away. So again, it's good. Again, regardless of when your test date is, you are at the right place because there are learnings for each and every one of you in this webinar, and that's the way we design our webinar so that everyone can get appropriate learnings based on his or her skill set, based on his or her preparation level. So, all right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to change the layout, and the screen is going to take a couple of seconds to stabilize at your end. So as soon as you start to see Algebra Quant Live session on your screen, please click on yes. Okay, let's wait for a couple of more seconds for the screen to stabilize at your end. Okay, now for occasionally we get this. So before I get going, just a few housekeeping tips. Occasionally we get this input from individual students that the voice is breaking in the webinar. Now the voice quality from our end is good, is perfect. So there are two things for you to check. One is your internet connection. If your connection is good, then the second thing to check is, are you accessing this webinar from your browser or are you accessing it from your desktop application? So if you are accessing it from your browser, then I want you to download this desktop application so that you can attend this webinar in a seamless manner. All right, so I'm going to share this link with all of you in this Q&A, so through this Q&A part. So click on that and download this app. Okay. Yes, I mean, desktop app works perfect. And again, I want all of you to enjoy this webinar to get the maximum from this webinar. So please spend a couple of minutes to, in fact, it's going to take you just a few seconds to set this up and get going. All right. So let's now get into, okay, some housekeeping tips. I will be asking you lots of questions in this session. So all your questions, the responses to my questions, please put those in the polls that you see on the screen. You see this yes no poll, you see the short answer poll, and then I will also be bringing out the polls with regards to your to get your inputs with regards to the answer choice that you select. Right now, in terms of timing, you all, I don't believe in timing oneself when you are in preparation mode. You're not as yet in test readiness mode, so I don't believe in giving yourself in putting that time constraint on you. Now, that being said, we are in this webinar, we have a certain agenda to complete. So what I typically do is I would is open up the poll. So whenever I give you a question on the screen, you will see a question on the screen. Whenever I give you that, I want all of you to click on still solving, and let's do that practice right now. And again, I'm just spending this time so that those of you who are installing your desktop app, you do get the time to do that as well, right? So click on still solving. As soon as I get, let's say, about 50 to 80 people over here, I'm going to then remove broadcast results, and then you guys solve the question, put in your answers, and then this way, when let's say 50% of you have changed your response to appropriate answer choice, I give you a 30-second or a 15-second warning, depending upon how complicated that question is. So this is how I time you in the session. I don't say that, okay, you have to solve this question in 1.5 minutes or in 1 minute or in 2 minutes. I don't believe in that kind of time restriction. All right, so that's about the polls here. So again, any question that I ask you, put the responses to those questions in the poll. Any questions that you have from either me or Shweta, put those questions in the Q&A pod. So this is where you get personal feedback from us. So essentially, Shweta will be taking care of the Q&A part. She will be responding to your questions over there. Okay, but don't put your questions in the short answer poll, because I routinely refresh that poll, so I don't want your question to go unanswered. Okay, all right, then let's get into this session now that the housekeeping tips are all done. Purpose of this session. Essentially, GMAT is a test of application, right? Now, you may know the concepts, but if you delve directly into solving difficult questions or into solving as many questions as you can, then your returns are not going to be as much, because there is one big step that you're missing, and that is how to apply the concepts that you have learned. Okay, what are those process skills that you need to master in order to solve questions that the GMAT is going to throw at you if you want to score that Q49, that Q50, that Q51, right? So that is what we're going to be talking about in this session. What do we mean by learning application? And we are going to be teaching you how is it that you need to translate your understanding of the concepts into solving questions that you will be that you will need to solve in the GMAT environment. Okay, so we are going to be focusing a whole lot on process of solving questions, right? Now, one thing that you are not going to get from this session is shortcuts or tricks to solve questions. Why? Because quite frankly, they don't work. Now, what do I mean by that? I know a number of you, and basically tell me with a show of yes, how many of you believe that shortcuts and tricks work? And I wouldn't be surprised if majority of the class says that yes, we do believe that shortcuts and tricks work. For the precise reason that shortcuts and tricks are things which you should be able to determine on your own as you build your skill level in application, in process skills to solve certain questions, right? Shortcuts and tricks should not be taught. If I'm teaching you shortcuts and tricks, that means I haven't done my job in teaching you how is it that you should be solving questions by I haven't done my job in teaching you the process skills. So anytime you think about learning shortcuts and tricks, I want you to ask yourself, is that the right thing that I need to be focusing on? Because if you are learning things the right way, then you shouldn't have to learn shortcuts and tricks. Those will come automatically, intuitively to you. Okay. And that's the very nature of GMAT questions, whether they are verbal or quant. If you build your basics right, which means if you have the right conceptual understanding, and that doesn't mean just knowing the concepts. That means knowing the concepts, why they work, why do certain things work a certain way, right? So again, you have to understand um, the concepts in their entirety, and then you need to understand how is it that you need to apply those concepts. And once you master those two things, you will automatically be able to apply or come up with shortcuts on your own, because those shortcuts would work wonders for you, because those would be things that you have come up with on your own. Okay, so make sure that you don't focus on shortcuts and tricks, right? So that's something which you're not going to get from this session. All right, so we're going to teach you how is it that you can arrive at those on your own. All right, so how are we going to do this session? We are going to be so in this session, we are covering linear inequalities, quadratic inequalities, absolute value equations, and absolute value inequalities. First, I'm going to be testing you on your skill level in just conceptual skill level through these 6 warm-up questions. So these are not, so these are simple questions, maybe 550, 600 level, or even slightly less than that. Again, these are purely conceptual questions. So I will be able to give you feedback on how well you understand these. Then we're going to apply these concepts in the GMAT context. We're going to be solving 8 questions, and these are going to be difficult questions, okay? And after we solve every question, we are going to be going over the detailed solution. So we'll be going over the solution in detail, and we will be giving you feedback on, okay, where is it that you faltered? What is it that you need to do in order to avoid faltering in such questions? All right. So let's get going with this. And here is your you're going to get your first question. So let's get a pen and a paper ready. I want you to take notes. I want you to show your work legibly on your scratch pad, on your paper. Obviously, I'm not going to see that, but I want to make sure that all of you get in that habit of not scribbling, but laying out everything clearly, because that's a very important step in quant. Okay. Now, before we start solving warm-up questions, I do want to get some inputs from you with regards to your comfort level in algebra in general. So just click on the percentage level that works the best for you. All right. So if I read this correctly, all right. Less than half of the class is 100% or more than 100% confident. Okay. So more than half of the class is less than 100% confident. Obviously, that's a direct inference. Okay. All right. Sounds good. Now, my recommendation to people who believe they are more than 100% confident, okay, or 100 or 100% confident. So you all should get all the questions in the warm-up quiz correct. Okay, you shouldn't make any mistake. So after you answer these warm-up questions, I'm going to ask everyone what your accuracy for these questions is. So again, this is more of a check at an individual level, that you should be able to, that's your target, is that you should be able to get all the warm-up questions correct. Okay. All right, and then let's get going. Let me ask you one more question, actually a couple more questions. Okay. Tell me, based on your understanding of your skill set, what prevents you from getting a good quant score today? Is it conceptual gaps? Is it the very nature, the time nature of the test? Is it data sufficiency question, or you're not sure? So conceptual gaps for quite a few of you, the largest segment. Then timed aspect and data sufficiency they're almost similar. All right, sounds good. Okay, let's see how we can address these issues today. Okay, all right. Now let's start solving questions. Okay, there's the first warm-up question. Actually, let me first show you the poll as well. So, all right, so let's click on still solving. Now that's process in action. I have about 160 participants, so let's get this number to at least 100. Yeah, we're inching towards that. Okay, I am sure you guys will come back over here. All right, so here is the question. Go ahead and solve it. All right, these are not GMAT-like questions, so you won't see option E, right? So again, just solve, just select the option that's pertinent to you, that you think is correct. And again, we'll be solving 3 questions one after another. And put all your answers in the poll that you see up on top. All right, last few seconds. All right, I'm going to end this poll and I'm going to show you the next poll, question number 2. Go ahead, click on still solving, please. Good, go ahead. Here's question number 2. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Let's say last 10-second warning. Okay, Now here comes question number 3, and then after these questions, after this question, we're going to discuss each of these one by one. Go ahead. All right, here is question 3. All right, last few seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay, so we'll discuss all these questions one by one, but tell me, how was this experience? Before I tell you what the correct answer is for each of these three, what the correct answers are for each of these three questions, tell me, how was your experience? Were you feeling, you know, were these too basic of a questions, cakewalk, too easy? How many of you found these questions a little bit of a stretch? That is, you felt that you had to think through to solve these questions. How many of you felt these questions a little bit difficult or a bit of a stretch to solve? Okay. So more people, so let's make sure that so people who are clicking on yes found these questions difficult. So again, these, as by design, these questions are easy. These questions are pure conceptual questions, right? So what I'm going to now tell you is the first question was simple question based on linear inequalities. How is it that you solve a single linear inequality? Now, for this question, your responses were most of you got this question correct. So I think the accuracy for this question was 80%, 70% here. Let me broadcast these. Yeah. So the correct answer is choice B. All you do over here is move y to the left side. You get 5 plus 10 is greater than 0. Move 10 to the other side, and then you get y is greater than minus 2. So very straightforward. Those of you who were not able to get, so 30% of the class who was not able to solve this question or who answered this question incorrectly, you need to work on your very basic skills of how is it that how is it that the inequalities work, right? So that's my feedback to you. That's 30% of you over here who did not select choice B. Now, second question got a little bit to the next level, wherein instead of just two inequalities, instead of just one inequality, you had two inequalities. So all we had to do over here was arrange these two inequalities so that they both have the same sign, right? So what we did over here was we manipulated these two inequalities such that they both got the same sign over here. So let me just, yeah. So they're both greater than inequalities over here, right? So the variables are on one side and the constant is on the other side, and both of them have the same sign. So that's the manipulation that we did. Now, once you do that, you can simply add the two inequalities and you can get the value that you're looking for. Here, we were only interested in the value of y. Now, this question, people took a bit more time to solve this question, which tells me that you're not as comfortable with solving a system of linear inequality. So that's another conceptual gap. Now, in terms of the accuracy, again, you can see that the accuracy for this question reduced from the previous question, right? So over here, only 56% of the class was able to solve this question. So those of you who were not able to select choice B, and even those who selected choice B, there were some people who took longer to solve this question. So that indicates to me that you may know the concept, but you may not know the concept well enough such that you can apply the concept right away and solve it. Okay, so that's my feedback. So again, the thing that I'm telling you, I want each one of you to see, okay, which one of these applies to me, right? And then implement the corrective action. And the corrective action in this case is you have to enhance your conceptual understanding. There's no two thoughts about it. Okay, and this is where the concept files that we shared with you and that you have access to in your free trial, this is where those concept file come into picture. So definitely after this session, for those of you who have these conceptual gaps, you should spend good amount of time, at least 2 hours, on these concept files so that you gain all the conceptual understanding that you need to gain. Okay. Now, question number 3, that's where things got really interesting. Let me bring question number 3. Now, this is the question in which, apart from knowing how to solve linear inequalities, this question also involved how is it that you need to read the question statement, interpret what it's asking, and answer the question appropriately. And I'm going to tell you what I mean by that. And plus there is another conceptual skill that was required. So let's do that. Now both these, and if we don't need to do any manipulation, both these inequalities are already with the greater than sign, right? So we simply add the two inequalities. What we get is minus 4m is greater than minus 10. Now, how many of you, and show of yes, and let me get the poll here. All right. How many of you said that if minus 4m is greater than minus 10, then I cancel out the negative sign, I get 4m is greater than 10? How many of you did this? Okay, let's get more responses. All right. So I'm glad that not that many of you did this, right? But for those of you who are selecting, yes, this is a conceptual learning for you, you cannot do this. Whenever you multiply both sides of the inequality with a negative sign, you always have to flip the inequality sign, right? So whenever you multiply by, so what you're doing over here, when you cancel out negative sign from both sides, what you're essentially doing is you're multiplying both sides by negative 1. When you do that, you need to flip the sign of the inequality. And I'm not going to teach you why that happens. For that, definitely go into our concept file on linear inequalities, because you're going to learn this concept really very well over there. So please do that. Okay. So definitely for 20 of you who have selected yes, this is a major conceptual gap that you have. So definitely bridge that gap, because right now this one is an easy question wherein we were able to identify this conceptual gap. As you move forward into difficult questions, this will need to be applied intuitively, right? You cannot afford to make this mistake. Okay. So definitely bridge that gap by going through the concept file. Now, here comes the next gap. M is less than 10 by 4. which mean and m, now what do we know about m? What we know about m is that it's non-negative integer. It's a non-negative integer. Now what's a non-negative integer? What all values can a non-negative integer take? It can take zero is a non, so I would say the better question to ask is, how many of you know that zero is a non-negative integer? Click on yes if you know for certain that zero is a non-negative integer. Okay, so for those of you who are clicking on no, and I really appreciate your honesty. Thank you for basically selecting the choice that is actually correct for you, right? So good that you're selecting no, because then that gives me the opportunity to give you that personalized feedback here, right? So for those of you who don't know that zero is a non-negative integer, I want you to make a note of that concept. And this concept is not applicable just to algebra. This concept is very much applicable to number properties, so arithmetic as well as algebra. So this is a very important basic property of numbers, of integers. Okay, now for those of you who selected choice B, and choice B was the more popular answer choice. For those of you who selected choice B, you faltered because you considered zero. You did not consider zero as a non-negative integer. Okay, so again, make a note of this feedback. Very important. Okay. Now, for those of you who selected choice C, you answered the question correctly for the right reason. I hope that you didn't select C for by fluke, so that's obviously there. Now, for those of you who selected A or D, or who were not able to make a selection, this means that you either don't know how to solve the system of linear inequalities, and if that's the case, then you would have faltered in question number 2 as well, or you made a mistake with with doing the sign, the reversal of the sign upon multiplication by a negative number. So again, write down whichever feedback point is applicable to you. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I am going to bring a poll over here, and I want you to write down what all takeaways do you have from this set of 3 questions, and then we'll move to the next question. And again, for those of you who answered all these 3 questions correctly, you may not have any takeaways. But for those of you who made mistakes, and there are quite a few of you who made mistakes, I want you to write down what your takeaways are from these 3 questions, because that's what we are here for. Now, silly mistake. Whenever you say silly mistake, I want you to question yourself. What is that silly mistake? Flip the sign signal when multiplied by -1. Good. Read the question carefully. Read the question carefully. What aspect did you miss in the question statement? And again, I'm giving you all this feedback because you will be spending majority of your time, I would say 90% of your time studying on your own, which means that you need to know how exactly you have to review the solutions to get feedback from the solutions, right? So I want you to be a lot more precise. Okay, so for those of you who are saying that concept of adding the equations made it easier, that's a very precise understanding. That's good. Multiplying an equation, then for those of you who are saying zero is a non-negative integer, that is a very precise feedback that you're getting. But for those of you who are saying silly mistake or concept refresh, you need to be more precise. Concept refresh, what kind of concept refresh? Okay, be mindful about what? Okay, now if you are so there's a question here, I did not understand when to add inequality. So that means there is a big conceptual, you need to learn how to solve linear inequalities. So that's the feedback for you, right? And again, this session is not meant to teach you that, but this session is meant to tell you where is it that you can learn that. Okay, so definitely go back into the linear inequality, go back to your free trial if you're not as yet an e-GMAT student, and review that linear inequalities file. Okay, know the concept but made the mistake like not flipping, multiplied, and silly error in calculation. So this is, yes, exactly. So you have to learn the concept with regards to multiplying both sides of the inequality, with regards to flipping the sign of the inequality when you multiply both sides by a negative number. All right, good. So I will be bringing, so again, I want you to get in the habit of writing down takeaways like this very precise takeaways, because those are the takeaways that are important for you to progress further in your preparation. Okay, and no mistake is a silly mistake. I would say, when I say 90% of the mistakes are not silly mistakes, right? Now, if you say m is less than 10 by 4 and you by mistake say m is less than 1.5, that's a calculation mistake, right? Instead of 2.5, if you write down 1.5, that's a calculation mistake. That also I would not classify as a silly mistake. Now, if you calculated 2.5, but your mind got wavered somewhere else and you wrote 1.5 or 3.5, or you dropped a 5, then I can say that this is a silly mistake. But that is also, that I would call as concentration mistake. Okay, so another big learning that I want all of you to take, or another suggestion, I wouldn't say that it's a learning, but that's a suggestion from my side, that do not be very stingy with the use of word silly mistake. And I know quite a few of you. How many of you classify quite a few mistakes as silly mistakes? I have seen that. I mean, we've conducted so many webinars. I know that, silly mistake is considered as a very good fallback. Oh, I made a silly mistake. Please, I mean, use that word sparingly, and always question. There's always a reason behind why you made that silly mistake. Okay. All right. So enough of this. So I usually go on a rant whenever it comes to taking that proper feedback from the solutions, and I hope that was beneficial for you. All right, so now let's come to question number 4. There you go. Please click on still solving. All right, last few seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll. And here comes question number 5. I know for some of you the pace is a little bit slow. Please bear with me for another couple of minutes. When we go into our difficult questions, the pace is going to increase. So I apologize for that. Please click on still solving. All right, here you go. Question number 5. Go ahead. All right, last few seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the poll. All right, so let's look at question number 4. So we have moved from linear inequalities to quadratic inequalities now. Okay, so um, let's see question number 4. Bring the poll. So I could see that you were not as as a class, you were not as comfortable with quadratic inequalities. Again, that's absolutely fine. We just need to get that feedback and then move on. So the correct answer over here is choice C, and we see that only 56% of the class was able to answer this question correctly, and they were and you guys took longer to solve this question. Okay, now there are two ways in which we can solve this question, or quadratic inequalities, and I'm just going to give you at a very high level what is the basis of quadratic inequalities. Essentially, what does this inequality mean? X minus 2 into x minus 3 is greater than 0. Now for a value of x, what you have over here are simply two numbers whose product is greater than 0. That's how you need to interpret, or that's how you translate a quadratic inequality. All you're saying is for that particular, for a value, for a set of values of x, there is a product of two numbers such that and that product is greater than 0. That's what you're saying. And then you apply your number sense to understand when is the product of two numbers greater than 0, right? If either both the numbers are positive or if both the numbers are negative, right? And then based on that, you basically say if both x minus 2 and x minus 3 are positive, then what you have is x is greater than 2 and x is greater than 3. Now, in what scenario will x be both greater than 2 and greater than 3? If x is greater than 3. So you're combining these two inequalities and you're getting x is greater than 3, right? Likewise, you do the same treatment when x minus 2 and x minus 3 are negative, right? So this is the conceptual understanding with regards to how do you solve quadratic inequalities, right? And again, I don't expect, for those of you who were not able to answer this question correctly, I don't expect you guys to learn the method just like this. I want you to go into the concept file, which is available in your free trial. I want you to go into the concept file and learn quadratic and access the concept file pertaining to quadratic inequalities so that you get this level of understanding. Now, there is yet another way, which is essentially a derived way of this concept, right? So, which is what we call as a wavy line method. Again, I'm not going to show you the method here. I'm just going to say that this is I can say that this is a quote unquote shortcut, but this is really a derived concept of wavy line methods, which you can utilize to take away certain steps from your solution, right? So this is a method that we teach in our concept file, so definitely go through that. And this method is very handy, but do this method only if you understand how do quadratic inequalities work. Okay, so again, this for those of you who were not able to answer this question, that's a feedback for you. Okay, now let's come to question number 5, and this is a very interesting question. And again, the accuracy for this question was a lot lower, I believe, than the accuracy for the other question. Well, not significantly lower. The correct answer is choice C, and about 50% of the class selected it, so slightly lower. Now, in this question, let me ask you this. So when you see this, is this inequality in any form of inequality that you are familiar with? Is it a linear inequality? Yes or no? It's not a linear inequality. The maximum power of x is not 1 here, right? So this is not a linear inequality. Is this a quadratic inequality in its current form? It's not a quadratic inequality. So we don't know. I mean, this is fraction. This is an inequality utilizing fractions, right? And we don't have a way to solve this inequality. But whenever you come across such scenarios in which you don't have a way to solve a particular inequality, always think about how can how can I manipulate this into something that I'm more familiar with, into something that I can solve. So you need to transform this inequality into into either linear inequality or quadratic inequality. Now, so one thing that comes to our mind is that I simply see x plus 4 and I can multiply both sides by x plus 4, and what I will get is x minus 3 is less than 0. How many of you are tempted to do it this way? I can move x by 4 over here, and I can simply say that x minus 3 is less than 0. Okay. Now, for those of you who are tempted to do this, I want to remind you of the fact that x plus 4 can either be negative or positive, right? What does that mean? If it is negative, if x plus 4 is positive, then yes, you can do that without changing the sign of the inequality. But if x plus 4 is negative, then what will happen to the sign of the inequality? If x plus 4 is negative and you move, absolutely, you will need to flip the sign. Absolutely. Now, this is where I want you to draw a connection. In question number 3, when in that question, you directly applied the flipping sign, right? In this question, you have to think about the possible cases that exist for x plus 4. In one of those cases, because you don't know anything about x, you don't know if x is positive, if x is negative, you don't know anything about x, which means that x plus 4 can be either negative or positive, which means that there are two conditions that are possible over here. When you take x plus 4 on the other side, you may, if it's positive, then you will not flip the sign. If it's negative, you will flip the sign, which means you cannot do this. Okay, so what we're going to do now is, but we still have to figure out how is it that we can convert this into a known form. What if I multiply both sides by x plus 4 whole squared? If I multiply both sides by x plus 4 whole squared, now x plus 4 whole squared is always going to be positive, right? Which means that I don't have to flip the sign. Sign of the inequality will not change. So now when I do this manipulation, so just to think about how to manipulate, I have to apply this concept of multiplying both sides by a negative number, right? There's so much of processing that I need to do in order to just get to the point from this inequality into the inequality that I can comfortably solve. Okay, and this is the process that you need to learn. This application of process skills is what you really need to learn. Okay, is everyone clear about how we got from this linear inequality to quadratic linear inequality? Okay, now the answer choice that you have over here, minus 4 and 3, look at the parentheses here. This means that minus 4 and 3 are not included over here. Okay, again, you have less than 0, which means that x cannot be so again, x cannot be minus 4. Okay, all right. So again, you had to manipulate, and this is a very, very important process skill, which is which is quite a bit applicable in algebra, but it is very much applicable in number properties as well. Okay, so you have to build your skill set in applying the manipulate process skill. Okay, so that whenever you see something like this, in the test environment, when you're ready, right, to take the test, what should happen is that whenever you see something like this, you should always you should be able to get to this point intuitively. Okay, and that's the level of proficiency that you need to arrive at. Okay, it's very important to know what level of proficiency you need to arrive at. Now, beyond this, it's a simple conceptual application. But just doing all of this also required so many concepts to be applied. Okay, what all concepts we learned? We applied the concept that square of a number is always non-negative. We applied the concept that if I multiply that if you multiply the both sides of the inequality with a negative number, then the sign of the inequality flips, right? We applied the concept that we understood the constraints. There are no constraints on x. We don't know if x is positive or negative, right? So we applied that concept over here as well. So what I'm telling you is, just to get from this point to the quadratic inequalities, you applied three concepts, okay? But you applied them through the process skill of manipulate. And that is how you have to think about preparing for quant. So it's not just your conceptual understanding, it's also how do you apply those concepts. Is this point clear? And again, you don't see this kind of treatment to quant. I mean, I don't believe that people treat quant in this way in terms of what is the process that I need to solve, right? And that's why I'm spending so much time in showing you the working of how is it that your mind needs to go from one step to another. That's the skill that you have to build. All right, so now this is the last warm-up question. So this is the easiest one because most people do answer this question correctly. All right, go ahead, click on still solving. All right, last few seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll. Now this is absolute inequalities, absolute value inequalities to be precise. And again, most 60, so the accuracy for this question is a lot higher than the previous questions than quadratic inequalities. As I said, it's relatively straightforward. It's a simple understanding of absolute values. So if you understand this properly, you would have been able to answer the question. If you don't, then again, go through the concept file on absolute inequalities. Okay, so spend some time on that. All right, so now let's move on to our let me ask you, how many questions were you able to answer correctly? So tell me, total 6 questions. Go and tell me how many questions were you able to answer correctly. So question 1 and 6 were the easiest of all. All right, so I see quite a few of you in 3 to 4 question range. All right, then there's okay, good. That's pretty interesting. So let's quickly recap. How many of you, actually, let me just ask. I know you guys are taking your key takeaways. How many of you got solid takeaways from this exercise, from warm-up exercise? And I understand people who answered all the questions correctly may not have been able to get those many solid takeaways. But again, it's always good to have that reassurance that I am doing well. But for those of you whose accuracy was less than 100%, I'm glad that you were able to get solid takeaways. Very nice. All right, now let's increase the pace of this session a bit, increase the difficulty level a notch. Now, just real quick, this is how your module looks like in the algebra course. We teach you the concept, we test you on that particular concept, right? And then we teach you the next set of concept, and then we actually teach you how to apply that concept, and then we have a practice quiz right there, right? Then quadratic inequalities, this is the concept file I was talking to you about. Inequalities basics and linear inequalities in two variables. These are the concept files on inequality, on linear inequalities. Then you have absolute equations as well as absolute inequalities. So inequalities basics, linear inequalities in two variables, quadratic inequalities, and absolute inequalities. These are all part of your free trial as well, right? So these 4 files. So definitely spend the time on them so that you get that conceptual clarity. Now, we're going to go into GMAT style questions. The first set of questions is going to be a little bit easier than the second set of questions. So are you all ready to solve these questions now? Okay, sounds good. And again, we'll follow the same drill. Click on still solving. Okay. Let's go ahead, solve this question. All right, last 10 seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. So the correct answer for this one is choice C. And again, this is an easy question. It was a 600 level question, but despite it being easy, only 55% of you could answer this question correctly. So this means that for this segment, for this class, this question is more of a medium difficulty level. So more of a 650 to 700 level instead of it being a 600 to 650 level. So again, just a little tidbit on the difficulty level of this question. Again, difficulty is always a perceived difficulty level. Okay. Now, what's given to us, it's a linear inequality in a single variable, and we need to find out the range of x, right? Now, in terms of x, whenever you read the question statement, always look for what all information do I have about the variables in in the question. In this case, do I know what x is? Do I know if x is an integer? Do I know if x is a positive number, negative number? Nothing. We don't know anything about x, right? All we know is that x is linked with this particular in this inequality, right? So which means that I simply again solve the linear inequality. I know the process. I get minus 32x is greater than 64. Now this is where some of you faltered. Okay, if for those of you who selected choices A and B, you may have forgotten to flip the sign of the inequality. Now in this case, what are we doing? We are multiplying both sides by -1, which means that we need to flip the sign of the inequality. Okay, so what we will end up getting is 32x is less than 64, right? So, and then your answer is x is less than -2. Then you come down to the answer choices over here and you see which of the answer choices expresses x is less than -2. Because that's another thing with problem solving questions. You may not, you arrive at this x is less than -2, but the answer choices may not be in that format. So you always have to translate or manipulate the answer that you have gotten into the form that's visible in the answer choices. And over here, choice C is the only one that that is in the form that you were able to arrive at. Okay. Now, for those of you who selected choices A and B, you probably made a mistake over here. I'm saying probably because again, you may have flipped the sign, but again, you may have simply not being able, you may not have been able to translate that appropriately. So that also could have happened. So tell me, for those of you who were not able to answer this question correctly, what mistake did you do? Flipping the sign, did flip the sign, but didn't translate to the answer choice. Okay, translation mistake. I like when you start using the terms that give you more specific feedback, right? Now again, if you arrived at x is less than -2 and you ended up selecting, let's say, choice D, you might have um, assumed, you might have considered it to be a silly mistake. But now that you use the term translation mistake, you know that, okay, I made a mistake while taking the answer that I got and converting that into the form that I see in the answer choices, right? Now you know specifically what is it that you need to take care of when you solve the next set of questions in your study prep. That is the power of using the right terminology. Okay, so very important. All right. And again, quite a few of you made the mistake of not flipping the sign, right? So that is a very important, that's a very important concept that you need to work on. Now, I do know that there are some of you who are posting specific doubts. I won't be able to take those specific doubts in for this particular, so in this mode. So please put those specific doubts in the Q&A part so that Shweta can address those. Okay, because I don't want your doubt to go unanswered. All right. Okay. So let's move to our next question. So the next question is a system of linear inequalities, and the first linear inequality is the same as this one. So you can save some time. Again, you won't get that opportunity on the test, but right now you can save some time by just simply taking the solution that you got from the previous one. So that's a hint as well for this particular question. All right. So I'm going to now leave you guys to answer this question. Okay, last few seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Interesting. So, how many of you are confident of your response? How many of you are confident of the way you solved this question? You feel, oh yes, I'm getting inequalities now. Don't worry, I'm not going to bust your confidence. Good. I'm glad to see the level of confidence go up. And the reason I say that is because none of you, very few of you selected choices C, D, and E. Okay. And there were few of you who were still solving, and that's okay. I do know that students who are not able to solve this, they are still, in the process of learning the concept. So again, that is going to continue in this session. But choices A and B, that's where the split was. Now, I will tell you that look at what's given to you in the question statement. What is the minimum value of the integer x? Now, can a minimum value ever be 5.5? Can the value of an integer ever be 5.5? No. So, how would you classify this mistake? How would you classify this mistake? Especially for students who selected choice A, how would you classify this mistake? Very important. I don't want to see the word silly. I think I should just say in my quant sessions or in my verbal session, the word silly is banned. Do not use the word silly at all. Unattentive, attention to detail. Okay. I didn't read the question statement properly. Reading the question statement, avoidable. Okay, I see that you guys are coming up with alternate words to silly. Good. And see, you are getting a better sense of what is it that you need to do. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit more specific information about this one so that you utilize that information. Okay, so let me share that with you. What this is, it's a process skill. Okay, and I'm going to just quickly go through the solution here because most of you got how to solve this. It's a process skill which is called as apply constraints. Okay, this is the process skill. So what this process skill entails is that you need to read the question statement and you need to extract everything that there is to be extracted from it. And but specifically for applying constraints, you have to look at given the variable or the unknown, what is it that if it's an unknown, you need to be, it's usually in this case the unknown has a specific characteristic assigned to it, that it is an integer, right? So you need to understand those constraints that are provided to you in the question statement, right? And so that's why if you are now focused on absorbing all the information about the constraints, you will not make, or the propensity for you to make such mistakes is going to go down considerably. Okay, and I'm going to share with you. So we actually created a YouTube concept series on process skills. So it's a mini course on process skills, which is on our YouTube channel. And when you solve the next question, I'm going to share the link of that mini course with you. So definitely look through that course, understand all these different terminologies that I'm utilizing, because as you use such terminology, you will be able to get a lot more specific inputs from your attempts on questions, and those specific inputs will go into your practice sessions, the follow-on practice sessions that you have. Okay, so you faltered. 45 of you faltered in this question because you failed to observe and apply the constraints that were imposed on this unknown x. Okay, all right, so now let's move on to our next question over here. All right, let's click on still solving. All of you are still enjoying the session, right? Still with me in this session? Good. Very nice. Okay, so here you go. All right, last few seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. All right, so we are continuing on with the similar spirit that we saw in the previous question. Can minus 5.5 be the value of an integer? I'm going to ask you the very same question over here. Can minus 3, because for those of you who selected choice A, this means that minus 3 is a possible value of z square. So my question is, can minus 3 be a possible value of z square? No. Why not? Why not? Why not? Why can't minus 3 be a possible value of z square? Squares are always non-negative. Absolutely. Okay. So for those of you who are saying squares are always positive, again, I want you to be very precise. Squares are always non-negative, right? Okay. So now, so that's the reason why choice A cannot be the correct choice. Now, why did you make this mistake? You made this mistake because you faltered to apply the process skill of constraint, apply constraint. Now, you may ask me, Payal, there is nothing specified in the question statement over here, right? What is the range of values for z squared? There's nothing specified in the question statement with regards to z squared being positive or non-negative, whatever it is that you're saying. Again, those are conceptual process skills that you need to be aware of. So not only do you not only need to identify constraints from the information in the question statement, you should also retrieve the constraints based on your conceptual understanding. And these constraints can come anywhere from your understanding of squares, absolute values, or other things. For example, in geometry, for example, the length of any side needs to be a positive number, right? It cannot be zero, it cannot be negative. So again, those are conceptual constraints that you need to retrieve. The question statement is not going to say z square is non-negative. No, that's something that you need to understand, that you need to bring out from your concept arsenal. Okay. So again, the reason why you faltered was precisely the same, that you did not apply the process skill. Now, there would be some of you who, because you don't know the concepts pertaining to how is it that you solve quadratic inequalities, you may not have even gotten to the solution, to the point wherein you could figure out that you need to take care of this constraint. So again, obviously you guys need to, for that segment, you definitely need to go through the concept files, right? But what I'm talking about is the segment that that knows how to solve quadratic inequalities but still faltered here. Okay, now the way to solve this is relatively straightforward. Again, look at this constraint: z square is non-negative. Now if z square is non-negative, then this translates into z square is greater than or equal to 0. Now look at this quadratic inequality, right? This is nothing but product of two numbers. Product of two numbers are less than 0, is less than 0, which means that one of the numbers has to be less than 0, right? Now z square plus 4 into z square minus 2 is less than 0. I know that z square is always a non-negative number, which means z square plus 4 is a positive number, which means that this term cannot be less than 0, right? Which means that only the only way for this quadratic inequality to hold true is if z square minus 2 is less than 0. Right? And this is where I get that z square is less than 2. Now, I also want to know what is my other boundary for z square. If I say z square is less than 2, this would mean that z square can be a negative number as well. And this is where I bring in this constraint from over here, and I get the range for z square as less than 2 and greater than or equal to 0. This is how I solve it. Now, if you think about it, I didn't go about solving this question in a formulaic manner. It wasn't that I simply applied the process of solving any quadratic inequality. I went by what is it that I understand, by my basic conceptual understanding of what does a quadratic inequality stand for. It stands for product of two or more numbers. It's either less than 0 or it's greater than 0, right? And in what scenarios will the product be either less than 0 or greater than 0? I simply apply my number sense there. The concepts that I've learned in number properties, I apply that over here. And then I simply solve, okay, is it possible for z square plus 4 to be ever less than 0? No, it's not possible because of the constraint on z square that I know of. Okay, so again, it's a very, if you understand the basic concept behind quadratic inequalities, you will be able to solve questions. But if you get in the rhythm of that formulaic approach that I need to know exactly how to do it, then you may get lost and you may actually lose focus, lose sight of things, of constraints such as this one over here, and you may simply end up selecting choices such as choice A. Okay, so again, be very mindful of where is it that you can falter. Okay, now let's solve this question. Oh, I've already shown you. So this is another question here. If z is an integer, how many value of z square satisfy the inequality? So again, it's the same inequality. I didn't give you guys a chance to answer this question here. But again, you arrive at 0 is less than minus 2, 0 is less than z square, less than or equal to z square is less than 2. What you get is, since z is an integer, z square could be 0 or 1. So the correct answer here is 2. So in this case also, if you ended up selecting just 1 over here as the answer, then you would have made a mistake in understanding that, okay, z square can be 0. So another constraint stuff. So the people who were saying square is always positive, again, that understanding would have cost you this question, okay? Because square is always non-negative. 0 square can be 0 as well, okay? All right, so now let's move on to our next set of questions here. And let's talk about your takeaways. What are the takeaways that you got from this set of 4 questions? More difficult questions than what we saw in the warm-up section, but we are still not at 700 level. But what are your takeaways from this section? And let's be very specific in terms of in terms of concepts, in terms of your process skill. Apply constraints. Highly important to read question carefully several times through. Apply constraints. Good. Apply basic logic of integers. Good. Good. Very nice. Okay, so now let's go into our 700 level questions. So for those of you who were waiting for difficult questions, there they are. Here they are now. Okay, so let's click on still solving, please. So be sure to take all your learnings from the warm-up section and the 600 to 700 level section and apply all those learnings in this section. Okay. Now, for those of you who are not comfortable with solving linear inequalities and quadratic inequalities, don't worry. I want you guys to still try. And I want you to go through all the motions that you need to go through, which means extract all the information from the question statement. Try your level best to solve the questions. And again, if you don't get it, that's okay. Just stop at that point and then look at the solution. So look at my treatment of the question. And then obviously you will be able to, I want you to gather information from this session with regards to the process skills, because you know that the concept skills are going to be handled by the concept files that I want you all to review. Okay, and this is for those of you who are not as yet 100% confident with the concepts pertaining to inequalities. Okay, all right, so here you go. All right, last few seconds. I know I've given you a lot of time for this question. I'm going to end the poll now. Okay. So the correct answer, because I know you guys would be wanting to know what the correct answer is after spending so much time on this question, the correct answer is choice E, 6. And 25% of the class got this question correct. And this is a difficult question. Now, tell me, what difficulties did you face with this question? Before I go into the solution, I want to understand what difficulties did you face while solving this question? Find x and y, getting mixed up, time to do the eliminations, focusing on what the question is actually asking, unsure about minimum and maximum, didn't know where to start from. Very, very good points. And I do dilemmas on the concept, okay, trap. Didn't know how to simplify to find x and y. So what you're telling me is there are several reasons why. So what I can see from here are that there are several reasons for answering this question incorrectly, or there's several difficult aspects of this question. The first thing is when you take a look at the question itself, some of you say that you weren't sure where to start from. How many of you got a bit nervous just looking at the question? I'm not even saying solving the question, but how many of you got nervous just looking at the question? And yes, this question does have that. If you think about it, just look at the question. For those of you who are, imagine if you weren't confident about solving linear inequalities. So that's an issue from concept standpoint, right? You're not confident about solving linear inequalities, and then you not only get linear inequalities, you also get a very long question statement. What is the positive difference between minimum possible value of x and minimum value of y? I mean, there's just a whole lot of stuff going on over here. And this is inbuilt in the very nature of difficult questions, 700 plus level questions that are asked on the GMAT. So you need to get used to seeing things such as this one. Okay. Now the way to get over such stuff is to apply the process skills. Okay. And I'm going to share this link with you right now. I want you to, and I will share this towards the end also. Just click on this and then browse to and bookmark this. I want you to go through these process skill videos because this will really help you maneuver your way through question statements such as this one. Okay. So the thing with, and okay, now the other issue which I saw these students face is that they don't know how to solve linear inequalities. Again, that's something which we've already discussed. We've been discussing that from the warm-up section on. That's a conceptual skill that you have to build, right? Then the other thing is, how do I process this minimum possible value of x and minimum possible value of y? The thing to keep in mind for this question statement is that you understand the concept behind when you solve a linear inequality. What is it that you're doing? You're figuring out the range of the variables, range of the unknowns, right? If this set of linear inequalities exist, then what is the range of x and what is the range of y, right? So you get that range. That's the output of solving a system of linear inequalities. Once you get the range, then all now you have to do is understand, in that, given that range, what's the minimum value of x? Given that range, what's the minimum value of y? And then you take the positive difference between them. This means that you subtract the two and you get the modulus of that difference. That's all there is to it. So essentially what we are doing over here is we are translating the English in the question statement into mathematics that we are familiar with, that we need to in order to solve the questions. Okay, so how many of you are familiar with the sentence structure approach that we teach for sentence correction? Okay, not many of you. Okay, so I would definitely want you guys to go through our SC webinar as well, or our SC free trial. And the sentence structure approach or the strategic pausing approach that we teach, that deals with breaking a long sentence in verbal down into its smaller components, right? So that you can extract all the meaning that there is to be extracted from that sentence. That's the exact same thing that's applicable over here in the context of quant. You extract all the information, you break your question down into smaller chunks. Okay, that's what we are doing over here. Now, what's given to us is this is our breaking down of the question statement. Two linear inequalities, two variables, two unknowns, and we need to find out the positive difference between minimum value of x and minimum value of y. Now, what's the constraint? The constraint that's given to us is that x and y are positive integers. What does that mean? That can x and y be 0? If it's given that x and y are positive integers, can x and y be 0? No. And this is where you apply your understanding of what positive integers are. If the question statement says x and y are non-negative integers, in that case, x and y could have taken the value of 0, but not in this case. Right now, it's given in the question statement, it's given that x and y are positive integers. So look at what we have done. We've split this question statement into three parts. Okay, given set of linear inequalities, what is it that we need to find out, and what are the constraints? Okay, now when you split this complicated looking thing into multiple parts, now you take one part at a time and you solve. What is the first thing that you have to do? You sequence the steps. The first thing that you need to do is you need to solve this set of linear inequalities, and you know how to solve it. And if you don't know how to solve it, then you know where to build that skill. Right, you need to go through the linear inequalities concept file. Right, so you do that, you solve the inequalities, and then you basically find the minimum and the maximum value. So I'm not going to go through the solution of this step of solving the linear inequalities, but what I'm going to tell you is what we get is y is greater than 6 and x is less than 8. Okay, so I want you to, if you guys faltered somewhere over here in solving, how many of you faltered, how many of you were not able to get to y is greater than 6 and x is less than 8? Because if that's where you faltered, then you need to build your skill set in solving a system of linear inequalities. That's the conceptual gap that you have. Okay, so you need to build that concept. You need to bridge that conceptual gap. Now, once you get to y is greater, and you can see all the working out over here. And when you solve equations or inequalities, there's a lot of manipulation that has to be done. So you need to learn that part. Okay, but once you get to the solution that y is greater than 6 and x is less than 8, now you apply this part of the question statement, minimum value of x. Now tell me, what is the minimum value of x if x is less than 8? What is the minimum value of x if x is less than 8? It is 1. Okay, why is it 1 and not 0? Because x is greater than 0. So this is where you apply the constraint and you arrive at what is the minimum value of x. Likewise, if y is greater than 6, then what is the minimum value of y? It is 7. It's not 6 because y is greater than 6, right? So it is 7. Now you have your two minimum values. You simply need to take the difference, and the difference is 6. Right? And that's your answer. Okay. All right. So now let's move to the next question over here. Question number 6. So essentially in this question, constraints and drawing inferences, those are the two process skills that we applied. Okay. Now, I see a question over here. So I believe your question is with regards to how we solve the linear inequalities. So again, you'll have to post that question in the Q&A part and specify which step you're talking about. Okay, so I do see that you have posted the question in the Q&A part. So thank you for that. All right, so let's now move to our next question, and this is a data sufficiency question. How many of you are comfortable with data sufficiency question, or you guys feel confident about data sufficiency questions? I know that the responses are going to be, yeah, less than 50% here. Yes. What is difficult about data sufficiency questions? Tell me, what's difficult about data sufficiency questions? Multiple steps, length, what else? Solving for requirements, okay. Having the overview of different possible paths the answer could take, okay. Decision making, language can be tricky. All right, it's good to know why you find data sufficiency questions difficult. I'll say one thing. If you understand the logic behind data sufficiency questions, and if you understand the concepts that you anyway need to understand to solve problem solving questions, if you build your process skill acumen that you anyway need for process skill problem solving questions, then data sufficiency questions are not difficult at all. In fact, I find data sufficiency questions easier than problem solving questions. Why? Because they're more, I don't have to do again, problem solving also doesn't require that many calculations, but it's really, can I find the answer or not? So it's more of a puzzle solving, it's more of a mystery solving with clues that are given to you. So that data sufficiency questions are a lot more fun for me than problem solving questions, right? So, but the key thing is you need to have those three things in place. One is, how is it that you approach data sufficiency questions, and again, you just have to understand the logic behind those, and your process skill and concept skills for problem solving, those together. Okay, so this is not the platform for me to teach you data sufficiency questions, but definitely I'll be able to give you feedback on how is it that you approach this one. So you'll be able to pick out things from with regards to data sufficiency as well. All right, so let's go ahead and solve this question. All right, I'm going to give you another few seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. So choice C is the most popular choice, 29%. Then choice E and A are following it. Okay. All right. How many of you feel confident about your answer? Okay, so about 60% of the class feels confident. Okay, all right, let's look at this. The most important step in a data sufficiency question is um, extracting as much as you can from the question statement. And I'm saying it's most important more from the standpoint that it's given least importance by students. Okay, that's why I'm saying that it's most important, because that's the fix that you have to make in your process. Is Z positive? Okay, such that mod of Z is less than 6. Okay, is Z positive such that mod of 6 is less than 6 and Z is an integer? So it's given to me that Z is an integer. It's given to me that absolute value of Z is less than 6. Now, what all values can Z take if given these constraints? So you need to identify the constraints on the unknown Z. Okay, and what I'm doing over here is I'm going to translate this absolute value inequality into my linear inequality, that minus 6 is less than Z is less than 6. So I'm simply applying my conceptual understanding of what is a modulus inequality, what does modulus stand for, and I'm converting that into this linear inequality. Minus 6 is less than Z is less than 6. Okay, now this means that there are 11 possible values of Z ranging from minus 5 to all the way to plus 5. Again, minus 6 and 6 are not included here. So before you go into analyzing the individual statements, you need to have a clarity of what is it that you are working with. It's not just that I have to find out is Z positive. I also need to know, what do I know about Z? Is there something else that's given to me about Z? So how many of you had this level of clarity when you went into analyzing statement 1? That Z can have these 11 possible values. Okay, so I'm glad that majority of you had that clarity. That's good. But those of you who did not, I want you to take that as a takeaway for you. Okay, that you need to spend the time on the question statement. Okay, all right. So now the job, again, you need to think about it this way. The job of the question statement is not just to ask you the question, it's to also provide you with the information that you utilize with the information that's given to you in the question statement. In the individual statements. Okay. Now what's given to me as mod of Z minus 2 is greater than 3. Okay. Now what does that mean? This means that Z minus 2 is greater than 3 or Z minus 2 is less than 3. So again, over here, I'm just translating this absolute value inequality into linear inequality. Okay, again, that's a conceptual application. So for those of you who are not able to do this translation, you need to work on your conceptual skills. Okay, now Z is greater than 5 and Z is less than 1 and Z is less than minus 1. Now tell me, according to the question statement, now when you read this part over here, Z is greater than 5 and Z is less than minus 1, will you conclude, how many of you will conclude that Z can be both positive and negative? How many of you will conclude that? Okay, now how many of you will take that information and say that statement 1 is not sufficient? How many of you will simply conclude based on this that Z is greater than 5 and Z is less than minus 1 and say that Z can be positive or negative and then conclude that statement 1 is not sufficient? Okay, so quite a few of you, and this is where you're making a mistake. Okay, what is a mistake here? The mistake is that you're not considering the information that's given to you in the question statement. The question statement says that minus 6 is less than Z is less than 6, right? Which means that there is no, look at this, Z is greater than 5 and Z is less than minus 6. This information you have to take from the question statement, and you have to combine the information in the statement 1 with the information that's provided to you in the question statement. Okay, and then you draw a conclusion whether statement 1 is sufficient or not. Okay, now is there any integer value that is less than 6 but greater than 5? Absolutely no. No integer, there's no integral value between 5 and 6, which means that now the inference that you draw is that all the values according to statement 1, if I take statement 1 and the information in the question statement together, because you are supposed to take the information in the question statement while you're analyzing with the information that you get from the individual statement. Okay, if you take both those together, what you infer is that all the values are negative, which means you can answer the question that has been asked in the question statement, which means statement 1 is sufficient. So for those of you who selected choices B, C, and E, where did you falter? Do you understand where you made a mistake? For those of you who selected choices B, C, and E, and quite a few of you selected that, do you understand where you faltered? And if you understood where you faltered, I want you to write that down over here. Where did you falter? Because that's going to be the learning. Tell me, be very specific about where you faltered or why you faltered. Pay attention to the question constraint. Okay. Constraint less than 6. Absolutely. So you did not consider that you didn't consider the information from the question statement. Okay. So this is interesting. This is very interesting. Okay, where did that thing go? I thought that because it disproved the question, it was not sufficient. So I believe what you're trying to say is because the answer came out, the question is saying is Z positive, and the answer came out as no. That's why you thought that statement 1 is not sufficient. Okay. Now this is also one of the very big misconceptions about data sufficiency question. Typically students are always they end up thinking that there are some students who end up thinking that the answer to the question has to be yes for the statement to be sufficient. That's not true. What the data, and this is where understanding the concept behind data sufficiency question is very important. The whole point of data sufficiency question is, can you answer the question that's asked? It's not saying that is, all it's saying is, can you answer the question, is Z positive? Now the answer could be yes, the answer could be no, right? The whole point is, can you definitively say that the answer is yes or an answer is no? That's what it is. Okay, so again, if you faltered there, then again, you need to work on your conceptual understanding of what a data sufficiency question is. Okay, all right, so now let's take a look at statement 2. Statement 2 is saying Z is 2 or minus 2. Now, again, the answer here could be yes, Z is positive, or no, that Z is negative. Concretely, I cannot say no Z is always negative or no Z is always positive. I cannot say that, right? Which means that statement 2 is not sufficient. So the correct answer is choice A. Okay. All right. So now let's go to question number 7. We're almost towards the end of the session. I think just 2 more questions left. So just bear with me a little bit more, few more takeaways, and then you'll be on your way to improve your quant score. So let's click on still solving, please. How many of you are tired? I know we've been at it since the last, 1 hour and 50 minutes. How many of you are tired? Okay, just be with me for another 10 minutes, okay? We'll be able to get through this. All right. There you go. All right, last few seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. So the correct answer for this question is choice C, which was the least popular choice. All right, let's solve this together now. The question is simply saying, is A less than B? Okay, there's no other information, no constraint that's given to us. It's simply saying, is A less than B? So the statement that tells me definitely, yes, A is less than B, or no, A is not less than B. The answer could be either, right? But the statement that gives me a definite yes or no, that statement is going to be the correct statement. Okay. Or that statement will be sufficient. Okay. Now let's take a look at statement number 1. What does it say? Mod of A minus B is equal to B minus A. Now, some of you may consider this and they may think that they have to do a lot of manipulation here. But frankly, all the statement is saying is, and this is a very important process skill of translating, right? You apply your conceptual understanding and you translate. All this is saying is B minus A is equal to mod of a number. Now, in this case, it's A minus B, but it could be K, it could be Y, it could be anything. But all you are extracting from this is that B minus A is equal to modulus of a number. Okay. Now, what do we know about modulus of a number? What we know about modulus of a number is that it's a non-negative number. Okay. Not positive, not greater than 0. We are saying it's a non-negative number. And again, that's where having that conceptual clarity, that 100% conceptual clarity is very important. Okay. It has to be a non-negative. It is a non-negative number, which means that B minus A is greater than or equal to 0. And this is where quite a few of you faltered. You thought that B minus A is greater than 0, and that's why you said that, okay, this statement is sufficient. But that's not the case. The case is that B is greater than or equal to A, which means that two conditions are possible. Either A is equal to B or A is less than B. Okay, which means that statement 1 is not sufficient. Okay, now let's take a look at statement 2. Statement 2 says that A by B is less than 1. Now I'm going to ask you the question. How many of you would translate this or would just simplify this and say A is less than B? How many of you will say that? All right, still quite a few of you are saying that A is less than B. Okay, again, recollect your understanding of the flipping sign. When you multiply both sides of the inequality with a negative number, you need to flip sign. So, do we know whether B is negative or positive? Do we know if B is negative or positive? No, we don't, which means that if we simply multiply both sides by B, then depending upon whether B is positive or negative, the sign of the inequality will need to change, right? Which means that I really cannot, I mean, there are two cases possible, and this is a process skill of considering all cases. Case 1, B is greater than 0. Case 2, B is less than 0. If B is greater than 0 and given A by B is less than 1, in that case, A will be less than B. If B is less than 0, given that A by B is less than 1, then A will be greater than B, which means that again, this statement is not sufficient. Okay. Now, when I combine both the statements, now what does combination mean? Combination means that again, if both these statements are true, what would it take for both these statements to be true? And what would take is the common case that is there between the two. A is less than B. Only if A is less than B will both these statements be true, right? So which means that together these two statements are sufficient. Okay. So again, if you notice, there isn't anything, I mean, there's no calculation that I'm doing over here. There is no over complicated processing that I'm doing over here. All I'm doing is just understanding the logic behind the question. Okay, and I'm just, translating the information. I'm just considering all the cases and I'm just going about doing it that way. Okay, now some of you have questions with regards to statement one. Statement one was simply, again, I'm just translating. B minus A is a mod of a certain number. I don't care what number it is. It's a modulus of a certain number, right? And I'm just saying that, which means that which means that B minus A is going to be greater than or equal to 0, because I know that's what modulus of a number is. Okay, and from there I'm getting two conditions. Okay, all right. So last question is actually along similar lines to this question. So try your hand at that, and I'm sure that if you got this question, you will be able to solve question number 8 as well. And this is the last question. So click on still solving, please. Go ahead. All right, last few seconds. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Here are the results. Okay, so, interesting. The correct answer is choice C, which again, it wasn't as popular as choice E, but let's go through it together and then we'll figure out. Is Z greater than 2? That's all that the question statement says. So there isn't much in the question statement. Okay, so definitely we need to find a definite answer. Yes, Z is greater than 2, or no, Z is never greater than 2, right? So that's what we need to find. Okay, so now let's take a look at, so such questions are called as yes no questions. Okay, now mod of Z minus 2 whole square is greater than 4. Now look at what you have in the statement. You have a modulus and you have a square. Now, do you guys, how many of you feel that there is there is a utility of the modulus? I mean, is modulus doing anything over here? Absolutely not. Why? Because square is a non-negative number. Modulus is also a non-negative number, right? So modulus of a non-negative number is always a non-negative number. So there isn't much that the modulus is doing, okay, which means I can simply remove the modulus. I don't have to process it at all. So what I have is z minus 2 whole square is greater than 2 square. Now I do my manipulation. So I simplify this and I bring it into the form that I can utilize appropriately. So this is a skill that you need to learn when you are dealing with quadratic inequality. So you will be able to learn the skill through the concept files and the practice files in the course. Okay. So I simply solve this quadratic inequality and I get z minus 4 times z is greater than 0, right? Now I need to apply my understanding of how is it that I solve quadratic inequalities. In this case, I've shown you the wavy line method. But again, whatever method you use, you need to be able to arrive at the conclusion that, okay, the solution for this is that z is either less than 0 or z is greater than 4. Now, only in this case, the answer is yes. The answer to the question is yes. In the case that z is less than 0, the answer to the question is no, which means that I don't have a definite yes, I don't have a definite no, which means that statement 1 is not sufficient. Okay. So for those of you who selected choices A or D, very few people selected choice D, but for those of you who selected choice A, Andy, tell me, which step did you falter at? Why did you think that statement 1 is sufficient? Or what did you miss out on? Now that you know the solution, what did you miss out on? You didn't work on the quadratic equation, you didn't factorize it, you simply got to the solution that z is greater than 0. Okay. Took 4z. So again, what you are telling me is that you faltered. So there are two places where you could have faltered, or three places. One is that you would have gotten scared of. Oh, okay, so let me just write. So let me just write that down. The first is that you got scared. Okay, let me just write that down. Scared of the expression of the inequality, which means that you didn't know how to utilize, so how to go ahead. Or you made a mistake in simplifying. Or you could not solve the quadratic inequality that you got at the end. So tell me, or some other. Tell me which one is applicable for you. Because again, quite a few of you did not select choice A, thought that choice A is sufficient. Okay, could not solve. So again, what this is, if you're selecting, made a mistake in simplifying, then that's a process skill that you need to work on. Okay. If you're selecting that you could not solve the quadratic inequality, that's a conceptual skill that you need to work on. So again, depending upon why you faltered, your corrective action is different. Okay. So again, this is why you need to understand why is it that you're making a mistake. All right, so let's move forward. Statement 2. Statement 2 is very similar to the previous question, right? The first statement 1 of previous question. Z is mod of a certain number. Now there's X, there's K. You don't know anything about X and K, but you know what encapsulates that X and K, right? And this is where your translate process skill comes in very, very handy. You're not looking at it as an absolute value equation. You're simply looking at what does it stand for? What does it mean in plain English? Z is equal to modulus of a number. Yes, I don't know what that unknown number is, but I do know that Z is modulus of a certain number. The modulus of a certain number is always non-negative, which means that z is greater than or equal to 0, which means that z is greater than 0 or z is equal to 0, which means that statement 2 is not sufficient because I don't know for sure if z is greater than 2 or not, right? If I knew that z is equal to 0, if this were the only case possible, then I would have said, yeah, z is not greater than 2. But in this case, z can be 0, z is greater than 0. I really don't know, right? So that's why statement 2 is not sufficient. Okay. Now we take a look at both the statements together. Now, when you consider both statements together, you need to consider the common parts between the two statements, right? In what scenario will both these statements hold true? It will hold true if you have z, if z is greater than 4, right? So you have to take the common set between the two, right? Or the intersection of the two. Z is greater than 0, z is greater than 4. What's the intersection? So what's the common thing between them? Z is greater than 4, right? So both the conditions together are sufficient. Choice C is the correct answer. Okay. So once again, GMAT Quant can very well be mastered. Okay, you can go from a low GMAT score, a low quant score to your high quant score that you need if you focus on learning. The thing that you need is 100% conceptual understanding and ability to apply process skills. Okay, so what I'm going to go through now are certain stories, which certain success stories, so that you can understand that it's doable, right? This first success story is for people who think that they're good in quant. Okay, now Krish thought that he's very good in quant. He'd always done well in quant, but he constantly faltered while he was answering GMAT questions. He fell in familiar traps. Frustrated with the lack of progress, he decided to change his approach. Okay, he started following a methodical approach, even changing his approach to data sufficiency significantly. Okay, and that's something which I believe you would have understood, that you really need to work on your data sufficiency. Okay, now after making these changes, he was able to improve his quant score to Q51. Right, so again, you have to focus on the right stuff so that you are able to understand these things. And again, I'm sharing certain web links with you so that you can um, get access to the right to the information here. So certain process, let me get process skills as well. Yeah, here. All right. The second one is of Leonardo. He had not been excellent with GMAT Quant, and he was stuck at Q45 despite trying really hard. And he needed a high quant score because he wanted to apply to finance-focused schools. And that's very important. Why is it that you need that high quant score? Okay, you need to have that end goal in mind. Because again, the process to get to that quant score is not an easy process. It requires a lot of diligence. It requires a lot of sweat, and sweating in the right manner, utilizing the right tools, right? So that's why you need to have that clear idea of why is it that you need that high quant score. Now, Leonardo wanted to apply to NYU, Wharton, or Tepper, but he needed that high quant score. So to improve beyond Q45, he adopted a methodical approach. And I want all of you to click on his debrief, to look at his debrief so that you can see the journey that he went through. Okay, he started consciously focusing on constraints, showing his work on paper. That's what I started off the session with. Write down, show all your work legibly on your scratch pad. That's very important. Okay, now once he had the approach right, he made extensive use of analytics that Quant Scholaranium provided him to isolate the areas that he needed to improve. And again, as we were solving questions, I was asking questions to you that why did you make a mistake, right? What is it that you did not do? Because again, based on the mistake that you make, your corrective action is going to be very specific to that, right? So it's very important for you to basically do that proper strategic review. And that's what Leonardo did, utilizing Quant Scholaranium, and he was able to get to his quant score. He scored a Q49, right? All right, let's move to the next one, Mazibar. Now, this is an individual who was extremely weak in quant. His starting score was Q30, which is a mere 20 percentile. Okay, now he spent a ton of time reading quant books, but he was not able to improve. Now, he benefited tremendously from the progressive learning architecture that the quant course provides him with, the e-GMAT Quant course, in which he was able to cement his basics before taking on difficult questions. And in case his basics were not strong enough, the course gave him the right feedback and he was able to improve to Q45, which is an amazing improvement from his starting score. Now, Guillermo, that's our next success story. That's a story of a person who had an extremely strong determination to study at top B schools. Okay, now he started at Q38, which coincidentally is 38 percentile on GMAT Quant. Now he also needed a stellar quant score to get admit from Wharton or GSB Chicago. And the only way to improve from such low score was to truly focus on learning, which he did utilizing video lessons. And he also utilized Quant Scholaranium to isolate his areas of weakness. Okay, so again, if you are focused on the right stuff, there's no reason why you would not be able to get to your quant score. Okay, so focus on learning and adopting good habits. Right, so I want you to, again, we've been talking about the free trial. Again, this one, you have linear inequalities in two variables, quadratic inequalities, absolute equations, absolute inequalities. So build your concepts first. Okay, and then build your process skills. So again, you have this mini course over here, which you can, again, all of this is available free of charge to you. Obviously, if you enroll in the course, you get all the application files in which we basically teach you how is it that you should be applying those concepts, right? So again, the course is complete. It's completely equipped to get you to the target score that you are aiming at. Okay. Again, a very important thing is trust the test maker. Don't think that the test maker is going to throw anything at you that you cannot handle. Okay. And believe in your skills. That's very, very important. Okay. So again, to end, all these concepts are available to you in the free trial. Your course has all the tools that you need, your Quant Scholaranium so that you can do proper strategic review, detailed application files so that you learn how to apply the concepts to solve difficult GMAT questions, and again, proper exercises and whatnot. Okay. Now, in terms of free content, you have these free algebra questions in Scholaranium. You also have practice questions that I'm going to share with you in the PDF. Okay. All right, let me share the PDF with you. Here you go. All right. So before you guys leave, I want to make sure that you all like the session. So definitely tell me if you like the session, why did you like the session? Your feedback is really important. Again, as I said, we do these sessions every weekend, so we want to make sure that we are incorporating your feedbacks and we are giving you the stuff that's tremendous value to you. Okay. And I would also want you to rate this session so that I get a quantitative input here as well. Strategic process for quant solving. Thank you for focusing on concept understanding instead of tricks. I really appreciate you mentioning that. I know we started off the session with that point. I'm glad that you mentioned this towards the end. And again, everything is so logical about the GMAT in general. And if you focus on just making sure that all you have to prove to the test is that yes, you are a logical person, yes, you go through everything in a methodical manner, and if you go through everything in a methodical manner, there is no reason why you wouldn't be able to do well. It's only when we get trapped in this thing of in the rat race of solving as many practice questions as we can, or just moving from one question to another, it's only then that we lose focus on what am I being tested on. Okay, So good. I'm really glad that you all loved the session, and thank you for that specific feedback that your specific reasons for why you like the session. Thank you very much. All right then. Good luck, and you can write to me at pile@e-gmat.com. We have or support at e-gmat.com. We have a full team of GMAT strategy consultants on standby to respond to your specific queries about how is it that you can get to your target score. We can help you build your study plan. So just write to us at support@e-gmat.com or pile@e-gmat.com. Okay, and good luck, and yes. We will see you on e-GMAT platform.